Brakatiyah Howell, Brakatiyah Shai, Brakatiyah Howell, Brakatiyah Shai, Brakatiyah Howell, Brakatiyah Howell, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim, Chakwadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, true well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Tadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. On the pre-Shaman, this week's topic is going to be entitled TikTok as a psyop to destroy the generation. And Fox News, Tucker Carlson, he put this video up. You could go watch it. This will give the government terrifying power. Pretty much when you go into it, he's breaking down how TikTok, which was created by China, is very different in China in terms of what is put to the top, what views they want to show and all that compared to here in America. And when you see the videos broadcasted in China, it's all to do with like critical thinking to advance, the mind of the youth and all that, put them in engineering fields and all that. But in the West, it's all about twerking, creating a generation that's trying to get rich quick off TikTok, but influences not work. And this is true. This is actually something very true. I was speaking to some guys that every job I've been going to, a lot of jobs I've been dealing with, it's a lot of people are talking about how this generation they don't want to work. And you got to think about like where's that coming from? Why is the previous generation willing to work and just have a completely different mindset? And that's because they've been engineered. The mind as a child is very malleable, right? It's very impressionable. And the things that you put into the mind of the youth, guess what? They're gonna grow up thinking that way and pass on that belief to their next sons. So, and this is also in the scriptures because when you read the book of Psalm 78:1, it says, "Master of Asaph, give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old." So wait a minute. I'm going to open my mouth in a parable and I will utter dark sayings of old. So parables and dark sayings is something that's been in our culture. Yahweh Shai spoke in parables and dark saying, but I'm saying that's something that's also been in the culture of Israel. It says, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. See, so that's what I was saying. It was passed down orally. A lot of things will pass down orally. History. I'll give you an example. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul spoke about Jannes and Jambres, the two magicians that withstood Moses. But when we go into the Old Testament, their names aren't mentioned. So how did Paul know their names? Because it was passed down orally, right? Also, you might look at certain situations like the three sons of Noah, how Ham was cursed because he looked upon his father's nakedness while, Shem and Japheth looked away. Why did they look away? Because they knew orally and from the culture that was, you're not supposed to be doing that. Of course, it was later written down in law during the time of Moses, but there were things, traditions, and everything always passed down to the next generation because that's how you mold a generation. You see, everyone knows this. It says, we will not hide them from their children, showing to the generation to come the praises of the Lord. See? And one thing that you notice in Western culture is every generation is very different. Why? Because everybody in this generation is very rebellious. You go to the Middle East and Eastern cultures, you see they're practicing the same things from their fathers from thousands of years ago. But here, the 70s and for example, the 50s don't look like the 60s, the 60s don't look like the 70s, the 70s don't look like the 80s. And I'm not just talking about an attire. I'm talking about the entire culture, because each generation become more and more rebellious and do whatever the fuck they want to do. Wherein the scriptures is telling you it should not be this way. We should sort of be very stagnant in our belief and our customs and hold them tightly. And this is how come the laws and that were written for us, they don't change. They're not malleable, right? Because, Malachi 3:6 says, I am the Lord, I change not. And the scriptures tells you that the Most High is not a man of variableness. So really the way that things were in the old times is how they should be now. The same loss of thinking, disciplining kids, you know what I'm saying? Not having a lazy and rebellious child put his ass to death. The Apostle Tahar, he put up a video showing, I believe, this carjacking with these niggas being niggas. And he said, what scriptures come to mind that would solve this problem? And brothers immediately went to Deuteronomy, I believe, the 20th chapter or the 18th chapter, dealing with a rebellious son, something that's not practiced here. You see? So this place is nothing but rebellion. And rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft, and that's all TikTok is teaching these young kids to do, man. Mainly these women shake their ass, be very promiscuous and adulterous and degenerate, and then you open up any sort of social media, Instagram explore page, all you're gonna see is women shaking their ass, things provocative, nothing really with thinking. Very seldom do you see people in their algorithms that have political shows or things dealing with like prophetic things. The RFID microchip going into the wars. They're not keeping in line with current events unless it's some bullshit, events. It says we will not hide them from their children, showing to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he hath done. So when you pass down things to the next generation, it's very impactful. This is how come they beat our nationality out of us when they brought us over here from the on Western Africa. When I say us, I'm talking about the Negroes, Latinos, and Native American. Primarily, I'm dealing with the Southern Kingdom when I make that statement. The Negroes, West Indian, and Haitians, which are again the children of Israel. All right, they beat that out of you. They indoctrinated us for hundreds of years to hate one another, to think light skin versus dark skin, man versus woman, and hate your brother, all that. That we're not the people of the Bible, and they socially engineered different things to bring our people into this particular state. Which, in all actuality, you can't do nothing against the truth because all that did was fulfill Deuteronomy the 28th chapter about the curses. But I'm just making the point that look, man, this is what the so-called white man has done, you know, and now the so-called Chinese, the Moabites, right? They're doing it to his people, and they in outrage about it. They, the so-called rights, but right wing, left wing, same bird. But the so-called right wing, all right, they and the conservatives, they bring it to the forefront. But wait a minute, how come you don't bring it to the forefront? What you do to our people with the drill music, and a lot of these music companies, all right, have contract with jails. All right, so it's a whole system put together to profit off of the death and destruction of our people. But that's not in the news. But guess what? When it's come to his people, now it's a problem. See, you know, because believe it or not, even the so-called white man's woman, she's completely out of order now. You know, and his system is getting out of order because his generation, his generation that will be the CEOs or whatever, they don't want to do none of that shit. They want to be fucking Twitch streamers. So now it's right at their footsteps. It says, For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers. So this is a commandment from the Lord. This is why the scripture says, seek not the Creator in the days of thy youth. It says that they should make them known to their children. And brothers that's in the truth to have kids, we raise them up into the scriptures. And you see the difference. You see the difference in raising your kid up in the scriptures, raising them up with the name. Brothers that had kids young in the truth, they might be, 13 or younger. You see they're much different than their peers because you're trying to guide them according to the scriptures and have them avoid the ways of this world. You see? This world is telling their kids, if you're born a male, you don't feel like being a male at 2 years old. Let's change your gender, so called. You see what I'm saying? That's why it's very important what you teach children and how they view the world. They mimic what they see. So the Lord's saying, look, these laws, statutes, commandments, teach it to your kids, man, ASAP, and let them know and keep passing it down, because the Most High knew. Most High knows everything. He says that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should raise and declare them to their children. See? So that's how it goes. It's a trickling effect. That they might set their hope in the Most High and not forget the works of the Most High, but keep his commandments. Boom. Imagine we were able to do this for all the generations to come. The so-called Jew, he was propagated and set up by the Most High to be in the power to fulfill Job 9:4. But guess what? They practice the laws. They don't fuck each other over. So-called Jew, they do not fuck each other over. I'm talking about them that practice that particular sect of the scriptures where it talks about that. A lot of stuff they doing is twisted versions of the law, but the law deals with being a brother to one another, man. You know? And if you talk about one so-called Jew, they already run the world. They'll band you on. They'll unite. But that's how Israel should be. You see? And then they see the rest of the nations of Goyim. In other words, fuck them. But it shows you what happens when you have a law and your whole people is running by a law and a system. You get order, especially one that is governed by the Most High. You know, the Lord said that, look, if you follow these laws, statutes, and commandments, people will marvel at your wisdom. You know? But the so-called white man in his Western society, he had particular laws, systems, and stuff set up in place, like his constitution. But that's constantly changing, you know, and the shit's just going south. So man shouldn't be governing man on their own feelings. You should govern each other by what the Lord set up. And then, oh, by the way, they always knew back then orally what not to do and what to do via the prophets, which have been since the world began. So the prophets of the Lord has always been on the scene, you know, being a mediator to men on what the Most High deems acceptable. Psalm 78 and 8. And might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation. See, so you teach them the law, statute, commandments, so they don't be rebellious and stubborn. A generation that set not their heart aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with the Most High. And this is sort of the generation that we're living in, a very godless, wicked generation. All right? This is a book of James 4 and 4. You adulterers and adulterers, you adulterers and adulterers, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with the Most High? Whosoever therefore love the world is an enemy of the Most High. Yeah, so, you know, don't be ones with the ways of this world. But what I wanted to get was, which is true, don't be ones with the ways of this world, because look at this world. If you follow this world, you're going to be like a fucking TikToker. You know? Yeah, but the point being is this is a wicked and adulterous generation. People are just have a do it as they will sort of mentality. And it's coming and crumbling down. All right, with that, I'm gonna give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachakodash, that belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, which you well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Zadakim, that do this thing in the most truth and sincerity. Shalom.